Assalamu alaikum. My name is Zainab Siddiqui, and you're watching Zainflix. Today we have invited Marco Moreno with us, who is a scientific illustrator. Hello, Marco. How are you?
I'm well, how are you? Thank you so much
Yeah.
for having me on.
Yeah, I'm good. So, Marco, would you like to introduce yourself to us? What are you currently doing? What have you studied? And what are you up to?
I'm Marco. I'm a medical illustrator, medical and scientific illustrator. Originally, I went to undergrad at the Rhode Island School of Design for illustration, just regular straight up and down illustration. I thought I was going to be a book illustrator, like middle grade chapter books or children's books illustration, where I would work in editorial. That was sort of the track that I was on at RISD until I started taking more science-oriented classes like scientific illustration and artistic anatomy and comparative vertebrate anatomy. When I was in high school and growing up, I was always interested in science and that kind of thing, so that really appealed to me. And also at the same time, I was working at the Edna Lawrence Nature Lab at RISD, which is like a wonderful facility that's full of plant and animal specimens that are free to draw from or whatever, make art from. Live animals too that I cared for. And so that was also like a constant scientific presence in my life. And I realized that if I was going to just purely go into like the field of illustration, that I would really miss science and medicine and stuff like that. And then in my junior year at RISD, Insel Choi, who's an alum from Johns Hopkins, who is also a RISD alum. She came in spring of 2020, before COVID, and she gave just a brief introduction to what she does and what her research was about and all that kind of stuff. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is what I want to do. This is amazing. So from there on, I sort of struck up a friendship with Insel, and she gave me a lot of advice. And I realized that I wasn't going to be able to apply to the accredited master's programs without the prerequisites that I needed. And, they weren't really offered at RISD, and RISD has a lot of contact with Brown University up the hill, but it was kind of at that point like a little too late for me to take the classes that I needed. After I graduated, like literally right after, even actually a little bit before I graduated, I was enrolled in RISD at the same time that I enrolled at Emory. For like 2 weeks, I was attending like two colleges at the same time. I went back to Atlanta after I graduated from RISD and spent a year taking pre-med and chemistry classes at Emory University. And from there, I applied. I took a gap year in between then and, applying to UIC and Hopkins and Augusta to, take it to GRE and to build up my portfolio a bit more and, do a little freelance work too on the side. Started getting involved in AMI and that kind of thing in that gap year. Then I started at UIC in summer 2023. And, I'm an illustrator at heart, and I couldn't get away from it. When I was in my undergrad, I tried animation a little bit, and I realized it kind of wasn't for me. So I decided in grad school, that was very helpful that I already knew that. I decided in grad school to really focus in on illustration, and I started working in 3D modeling software as well, and I thought that was pretty great and a pretty great way to depict stuff, like that I couldn't maybe depict with pen and paper. And, I kind of did everything I possibly could at UIC. I tried to really take advantage of everything, take as many classes as I could, and independent study as well, just to get like a little bit of animation under my belt so that I could do it if I was asked to. But I graduated like knowing a heck of a lot more science and definitely more illustration techniques that are unique to medical illustration as a field, and also just an appreciation for the field at large, and a very deep love for my colleagues and the people that have come before us in this field and paved the way. I'm a huge history buff, so I loved also looking at the history of medical illustration and all that in grad school. That's basically my background.
Absolutely. Awesome. Thank you for sharing your introduction. I'd like to know that you told us that you studied, you did a bachelor's in science before you got into master's in biomedical visualization. Is that correct?
No, so I got a bachelor's in fine arts from RISD. in illustration. And then I went to Emory for just 1 year as a post-baccalaureate student, so a non-degree student, just to take some classes.
Just to have some info on science.
Yes, just to check those off my to-do
Mhm.
list for graduating, for applying to grad school. A lot of people do it kind of the
Was
opposite way because it's, sorry?
was that like a prerequisite before applying to the masters in biomedical visualization at UIC?
Yes, and all of the accredited programs have
Mm.
science requirements. You know, you have to
Mhm.
take some chemistry and you have to take anatomy and physiology. At Emory, I took immunology and developmental biology. I also took chemistry and I took human physiology, and I took in the nursing school, actually, I took anatomy and physiology 1 and 2 with lab. I did some digital dissections actually because it was during COVID, where normally they would, give us a vertebrate to dissect. Not not during the pandemic.
Absolutely. So I'd like to know, how was the experience earning the degree of Masters in Biomedical Visualization from the UIC? What courses were very interesting to you that led you to become who you are right now? And how did the support from peers or like professors help you in your career?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the most defining class of any of the accredited programs, at least, is the gross anatomy with cadaver dissection. It's just such a special experience going in with the medical students. We had medical students and dental students that we worked with, and meeting them, working with them, and also having your own cadaver who is like a real person who, obviously they're not alive anymore, but they have so much to teach you. It's really like a very special thing. Like it's to me very emotional. I'm kind of getting a little emotional thinking about it right now because it's like such a beautiful gift. And so I spent a lot of time with my peers in the anatomy lab, not just studying the anatomy, which we had to do like to the same caliber as the medical students, but also staying behind to do sketches and stuff, and just getting everything I possibly could out of it because I knew what an enormous opportunity it was, and I wanted to just like squeeze everything I could possibly get out of it while I was there. I was very like I was very aware that it was a fleeting experience, and so I really tried to do what I could to get the most out of it. But besides that, and I'll say, I do think that was like the most defining one for me because I came from an art background, and so it was so different from anything that I like really, that I had done before. I mean, even at Emory, it was like nothing could really compare. I mean, I come from a family of doctors, and like they all still remember their experience in medical school dissecting a cadaver because it's so momentous. It's like once in a lifetime. I'm very, very grateful that I got to have that as well. But I think on the art side, I mean, I came in with absolutely zero knowledge of 3D modeling programs. And so I think my 3D modeling classes were like one of the also like biggest defining features of the UIC program for me. It completely like broadened my skill set, broadened my horizons about what was possible with illustration and depicting the human body and things that are too small to see with a photograph and all that kind of stuff. I mean, it was one of the classes where I came in like knowing absolutely nothing. With a lot of the classes that I took, I came in, knowing a few things and being like sort of familiar with the concepts, but with 3D modeling, I was just a complete novice, like had total blank slate.
Yeah. It's a kind of a technical side, you know,
Yeah,
really different,
absolutely.
totally different from your artistic side. Yeah. So
Yes, yes, totally.
yeah.
I was, at RISD, I did almost no digital art. I
Mhm.
worked almost entirely traditional. Did oil painting and gouache and pen and ink and sculpture, but not 3D modeling sculpture, like sculpture with my hands.
Yeah, right.
Like so. It was really cool also at UIC to have like broaden my horizons with the digital sphere because almost everything we did, in contrast at UIC was digital. All of our, because that's the industry standard really nowadays, to do everything digitally because you can get really precise and, there's a back button and, like that's important. Like when you're depicting something that, can change people's lives and health, like, that's the number one thing, I think, in medical illustration. So it's for me, it's natural that the industry standard is digital because you can sort of do quality control like that.
I think control is everything when you're working in this field. The more control you have, the better precision and everything, the quality output, everything is different. It really depends on how much control you have on the visuals that you're creating. So yeah,
Absolutely.
that's important. Okay, so I'd like to know your workflow when you're making scientific illustrations or illustrations for legal cases or litigation.
Yeah, this looks like my editorial and page design. Let's go to MedLegal. Yes. So these pieces I did while in the MedLegal class last summer at UIC, where our professor, she was in MedLegal for like 10 years or something, and she came to us with this list of case histories and X-rays and litigation files um, to create assignments for us that would be up to standard for a real MedLegal case. Because MedLegal firms hire a lot of people right out of school, it was is for me at least a really important class to take. I'm very glad I took it. I'm looking at a lot of my legal jobs right now, and it's really been very, very helpful. But as far as a workflow for a med legal case, and I have done some real med legal cases since graduating, which has been pretty cool. But for these ones that are on my website, which are actually sort of higher caliber than the real ones I've done, because everybody in the med legal field knows that the turnaround is just like that, and like lawyers need something by like the next morning or something, and so they can really be like pretty simple illustrations, not really something that you would want to put on like a portfolio website, but it's funny the way that works out. But anyway, my workflow, I guess, for well, I'll talk about the shoulder dystocia case there that's on the right.
Absolutely.
So what we were given was a like a doctor's write-up of the situation that he wrote before the patient sued. Um, like completely from his perspective, everything that he saw and everything that he did and how it turned out. And I was representing the defendant, the doctor, in the situation. So my goal with this was to show exactly how he did everything to industry standard, to the standard of care. Every single maneuver he did, and every cut and every twist of the child that he did in delivering this baby was for ultimately the benefit of the child and the mother's health. And it turned out great because in our mock trial that we had some of our professors, old friends, come by who were trial associates to come and sort of vote on who had the better case, because there was we were paired up on each of these cases. One was defendant, one was plaintiff. And for this, I managed to scrape out a win for this doctor based on these illustrations, which was really pretty rewarding. So yeah, I mean, I guess my process was to read very carefully everything that happened and come up with the scenario in my head and just be able to get that down as thumbnails. And if I was working with a client directly, I would of course send the thumbnails off to see, what works best for you, and obviously like get them back and with iterative design and so on and so forth until the final product could be created. I think that's how it is in med legal as well as within research and academia, which is more along the lines of where I focus these days.
Absolutely. I actually love the precision of shading and illustration. I really like how close to realism it is, and also not at the boat at the same time. Would you like to tell like what software were you using to illustrate this?
Yeah, so I really am. I mean, maybe I'll get some flack for this, but I am an advocate for Procreate. Um, I
Oh
like it
yeah.
a lot. It's yeah, it's so much more intuitive than using Photoshop.
Yeah, it is.
And
It's a
it's a
heck lot.
lot cheaper.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not as powerful as Photoshop. It can't do everything Photoshop can do. It doesn't have as high memory, and
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't have as quite as many tools and that kind of thing. But for sketching and drawing and painting,
It almost
I
feels like
think
you're doing it
it's
on paper. Yeah. It
right.
almost
Yeah, and that's the way that I was trained in school, and so it comes more naturally to me to work with Procreate. So in most, not all, but a lot of the sort of paintings that you might see, the digital paintings from me are done in Procreate, but a lot of the labeling and the leader lines are in usually Illustrator.
like your surgical illustrations as well.
Thank you
I
very
really,
much.
I really, it's so. How is this so realistic? I mean, it's beyond amazing. Yeah, I
I did a
mean,
good reference photo.
no, really, you really drew this. It,
Yeah.
it's like it looks like it's a photo. It's absolutely
Well, thank
realistic.
you.
No,
Thank
really,
you.
it's everything is so on point. Amazing.
Thank you. Thank you for
Who?
that. It was an assignment, yes. It was a tissue study.
It looks amazing. Yeah, but I really like that you've done such fine detailings. I really also like this one. How
Oh,
many,
thank you.
how many hours have you really put onto this one?
Oh gosh, that one's just so infamous. It's like the kind of thing where you do it once and you never do it again. It's like I just had I just wondered how far I could push myself basically on that assignment. The assignment was to just do line drawings. It had to be completely line, no tone at all. So this is, I wish, do you mind zooming in a little bit on it?
Just a second.
Yeah, you can click on the page. Whoops. You can click on the page on the picture,
Yeah.
and it might show it a little bigger, but I'm not sure
Is
if
it?
you can zoom in any further
Is it
from that.
showing?
But
Is it showing?
yeah, 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 it's showing. I can see it. But yeah, so there's no tone in this. It's all line, and you know, it was just a completely maddening process. I used a lot of different like reference, not necessarily in picture because I was very fresh out of anatomy after this. I just knew all this from the top of my head, but like um, I took a lot of inspiration for that mesentery, all the fat down there from Altioli, who did beautiful line work. Um, Whereas like a lot of the other line work was just sort of my own my own descent to madness. I think I checked the stroke count at one point and it was like over 80,000 or something like that.
Oh
I
my
mean, I
God.
think but to answer your question, yeah, to answer your question, I mean, I think it's probably took me about 30 hours or something.
30 hours. That's a lot.
Yeah.
But
It
it
was
looks,
I do not recommend. Don't do it.
yeah, but it's freaking amazing. I mean, the details, I mean, gosh, they're really good.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's nice to have in my portfolio, but um I think I can say it was worth it. I mean, it's definitely the kind of thing where you do it once when you're young and you have the bandwidth to do it so you don't have to do it anything like it ever again.
Yeah, I get it. I really also like the ones on the editorial illustration part. I really like
Thank you.
this one. Would you like to have some say on this one?
Yeah, so that was also for an assignment to make an editorial piece, like a cover for a fake journal. I used kind of the tongue-in-cheek, like JAMA, like uh, masthead, but I replaced it with SAMA, which is our student organization at UIC.
Okay.
SAMA stands for Student Association of Medical Artists. Um, and I was not the one that came up with this. I have to give that to Alex Contos, who did also a brilliant journal cover, like kind of modeled after JAMA, but with SAMA. Um, So yeah, I the assignment here was to take a another artist's style that was totally unrelated to medical illustration and implement it somehow into a medical illustration in a way that made sense. So I drew upon my my RISD training, my art history, and I remembered the Garden of Earthly Delights by Hieronymus Bosch. Um, and a lot of people don't know the name of the painting, but they know it when they see it. But it's just a crazy, it's a huge three-panel painting with creatures all over the place that are weird, and it was painted in I think the 14 or 1500s. Not quite medieval, not quite Renaissance, a lot of weird stuff in there. And so I took that aesthetic and applied it to the gut microbiome. So each of these weird little Hieronymus Boschian guys in there sort of represents gut bacteria and viruses and what have you,
Yeah,
that might populate the microbiome.
I can see that. Yeah, I mean, it looks amazing. I really like how it feels like it's an illustration, but it's also realistic. You know, that combination of being in between that is really amazing. No, I really mean it. It's amazing.
Thank you, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah, I'd like to also talk about this one. It was kind of really interesting to me. So, would you like to talk about this one, Trench Foot? What is this about?
Yeah. So this was a piece that had three parts. The first part was to make an introduction slide. I think it's on there if you scroll down or something. But uh, that was just oh, maybe not. Yeah, I only put in that one because I thought it was the best one. But basically, this is supposed to be a poster that oh that's much better. This is supposed to be a poster that can stand alone at like a conference. Um, I thought maybe for the Red Cross or Doctors Without Borders. And the situation talking about the effects of trench foot because we think of it as sort of an antiquated disease that or condition rather that uh, affected men in World War One when they were like in the trenches and constantly had their feet wet and couldn't change their socks and keep their feet dry and that kind of thing. And there's a terrible condition that caused like people to lose entire limbs because it was so bad. But now trench foot, or at least at the time that I was making this, I haven't really kept up with it, but um, trench foot was starting to come back as a common condition in the trenches in Ukraine during the that part of the Ukraine war. We see the rightmost soldier who's looking at the camera there is a Ukrainian soldier in modern Ukrainian uh, uh, soldier uniform there, and he's just in like the first stages of trench foot, whereas the men who are sitting next to him are World War One soldiers who are in further stages of trench foot. And this sort of scene where these men with trench foot would kind of sit, on the fire step there with their shoes off to have like a medical officer come around and inspect each of their feet was like a common sight in the trenches, at least as far as medical history is concerned. So um, I sort of made it like uh, a combination of like a World War One trench and also a Ukrainian trench based on reference pictures from both. And I also included those detailed pictures of feet on the
Was that
side
an
to sorry?
was that an assignment?
Yes, this was an assignment.
It looks really good. I really like how you implemented like the form of traditional art through digital art. It feels like almost as if it's hand painted on canvas, like all paint on canvas. I'm sure
Thank
you
you.
did that.
That was actually
I'm sure you
yeah,
did
that
that
was
intentionally.
intentional.
Yeah, yeah.
I was taking a lot of inspiration from like John Singer Sargent, who was on the Western Front like during that time and making little paintings of soldiers that he saw to then go back and create his big famous gigantic painting called Gassed. used a lot of that was very high economy of stroke. So, just like one stroke shows like just one highlight on the cheek, and that's all he did, or whatever. So I tried to, limit my numbers of strokes just to sort of emulate that.
Amazing.
Thanks.
Yeah. Okay. So I think we are done with this. Oh, okay. I'm just gonna stop sharing. Uh, okay. Okay. So, I'd like to know. So you said that you have done some legal cases, but you have not obviously uploaded on the website. I'd like to know what does a real life legal case illustration looks like? How does it feel like to work on it? What's the procedure? And how do you like go through the entire process? I'd like to know for someone who is just completely a noob to this, to the word litigation, even, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I've only done two, and
Okay.
the biggest one that I did was with a former research advisor of mine. She reached out to me and she said, "Hey, I have this lawyer friend, and he wanted to, get an illustration for this case that he's doing like next week. Do you think you could help me out on it?" And she's a very traditional artist, so she had drawn everything out on paper that he had then approved. So the approved sketches had already been run by him. All I had to do was basically draw what she had sketched in a more finished version digitally. And so I just kind of did that, and I never talked to this lawyer once. I drew and sent my first version off to my advisor, and she said, "This lawyer says to make these changes," and so I was like, "Okay." And it was a lot of back and forth because lawyers really want to get their way, sometimes to the detriment of the piece. But it depends on how confident you are in your own skills. But I think medical illustrators should be able to put their foot down a little bit more often than they do, that, this is our field and we know what we're doing, and we know what works and what's going to tell the story best, and all that kind of thing. Not necessarily. I mean, maybe perhaps not in my case, who's so new to it as well. I mean, I could call myself a noob also. But yeah, I think definitely people who've been in the industry for 5, 10, 15 years, they definitely have the authority to put their foot down and say, "Hey, listen, I know what I'm talking about. This is not going to look good if we, bring in all these other things, and or take this out or add all this text.
So
We should have more confidence in ourselves."
I get your point. Absolutely. So how do you begin attracting clients in the space of biomedical visualization in general, and
Mhm.
any particular strategies or initial breakthroughs you'd attribute to your early success? I mean, you still obviously you're still in the early stage of your career, but you were somewhat into the field, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
a little, yeah.
Yeah.
So I do get freelance jobs here and there, as to support myself as I continue searching for a more permanent position. And so that is half of my day job, is applying to different jobs and interviewing and doing all sorts of things like that. But the other half, I would say, yeah, or I guess it's more like thirds, like, or fourths even. I spend time applying to jobs, and I'm working on my CMI portfolio. I passed the first part, and I just need to do the portfolio part for the second part, and then I'll be a CMI. But that can also take ages to process. So I don't expect to be certified anytime soon, at least not for another 6 months or something, whenever they can get to my portfolio. But anyway, and I'm also like working on my own self and my own brand, and updating my website and things like that, and reaching out to people, just cold emailing sometimes, and contacting people that I know, like in my network. And then also I do freelancing on the side, where most of my clients come from Emory. So, I did take classes there, and actually my dad, I mean, the reason that I took classes at Emory is because I'm from Atlanta, Georgia, and that is where Emory is. And my dad's a professor at Emory. And so, when I was graduating from RISD and I was like, "Where am I going to take these science classes?" He's like, "Why don't you come down to Emory?" I was like, "Okay, I'll do that." And so my dad, I mean, I'm going to sound like a total Nepo baby, but I really try to like not include my dad in all this kind of thing. But, bless him, he really helped me out. He initially, he was publishing a paper with another scientist at Emory, and he needed some figures. And this was during my gap year. And so he reached out to me, and he was like, "Hey, do you think you can work with me and this other scientist and some of our grad students to make this figure. And I sort of got a reputation for being very easy to work with and very quickly able to turn around figures and give them what they needed in a timely manner. And also at the time working for cheap because I was not, I didn't have the education to charge very much. It's changed. But, I at the time, built up myself a pretty good reputation among Emory researchers. And so my name got kind of passed around. And a lot of different people started reaching out to me and saying, hey, I also need figures. I also need a journal cover submission. I want to make a poster, I want to advertise my work to attract grad students, I want to make a business card, whatever. People would just like come and ask me to do, what ails ya? I guess they had pretty much everything under the sun as far as illustration was concerned, which I was thankful that nobody's asked me for an animation yet. But I do plenty of illustration and graphic design work. So that kind of thing is sort of how I earn a living, or I have been earning a living while I'm looking for a more permanent position. But basically, I would say it's who you know and how you act. So I was lucky enough that my dad already knew who I was and knew that I would be able to do what he needed. And but it's not necessary that it's like a family member. I think because I had also worked with other Emory professors before my dad asked this of me. I was gregarious enough to during one of my human physiology lectures, my professor was drawing on the whiteboard something that he couldn't quite get across. Like I understood what he was talking about, but he didn't quite know how to show it. And there weren't very many good illustrations available showing what he needed. And so after class, I went down there and I was like, hey, do you want me to just draw this for you so you'll just have this figure? He was like, yeah, absolutely. I'd love that. And I did it for free because I was still a student and,
See.
like it was sort of me thanking him for, teaching me. But then that gave me a good reputation as well. And so other professors from around the biology department also started to reach out. So I have connections around where my dad is. He works in the Winship Cancer Institute. And so a lot of cancer researchers will come and contact me, but also I've gotten contacted by people in the biology department, which didn't have anything to do with my dad. So that I feel pretty good about, that it's possible to just like be outgoing enough and be daring enough to ask like, hey, do you need this? And to be able to provide your services. And so I think that's what has gotten people coming back to me, that I've been easy to work with. I've been gregarious and self-sufficient. And, that's all I would say about that, I guess.
So I like the fact that you mentioned that you were the one first who reached out to the people and told them, hey, I can solve your problem. And in the first stages, you almost did it for free. And then in that process, you built your reputation. And I think that that entire part is really hard, but it's really important to make you down the line a good illustrator within your network. So yeah, I really appreciate that. So, but I'd like to know, so there are a lot of people that do not get the formal degree in biomedical visualization, but they have this passion to like get into surgical illustration, talk to the researchers, talk to the scientists, and get hands on into the industry. How exactly do those people who do not have the formal education get in network with those people so that they could get work?
Well, I think it depends on where they are, like where they start from. So, like, I've heard about a lot of people who are getting into surgical illustration without the formal education because they're surgeons, or because they are nurses or surgical residents, or they know the surgeons and they are with them day to day. Like, for instance, my very good friend Peyton Miller, who's in my cohort at UIC, she's a surgical resident. She's a surgeon, and so she decided during her research her 2 research years to get a graduate degree in biomedical visualization. She could have just as easily not done that and been a medical illustrator on the side while also being a surgeon. So I think it's entirely possible to do that. It just really does depend on who you know. And, I was just at the AMI conference and I ran into a lot of people who didn't have a formal degree. They had just had that experience. So like, they had a BS or a BFA and just went right into like a medical illustration job because their portfolio was up to snuff and they could do what that employer needed. And from there, they were able to just build up a network of other medical illustrators or just to stay connected, via the hub or whatever to find that network. So I think, it's definitely possible to build up a network from, I mean, not from nowhere, but like, from not a graduate degree. It's helpful, but it's not necessary.
I get it. So you mentioned about the AMI, and I'd like to know more that you just recently attended the AMI that happened recently. So how was your experience at the AMI conference this year, and how did that help you expand your network?
Oh my gosh, it like tenfold. I mean, it was brilliant to go to the AMI and meet so many people who were just like me. I remember feeling kind of the same way when I first stepped on RISD campus. It was like, oh my gosh, this is a whole place full of people just like me. Um, and it's just a marvelous feeling, like wherever you are, if you can get that same feeling.
Yeah.
And I mean, you always had something to talk about when you go out to somebody. There's always something you're going to have in common that you can discuss. And it was also so much fun to meet the members of the other cohorts that were sort of my contemporaries at the other master's programs and be like, wait, I follow you on Instagram. Wait, I recognize your work. Wait, you did that weird stomach, right? Like that sort of thing was just priceless. I mean, I made so many friends and connections and not just with my peers, but with I mean mentors and people who've been in the field for 50 years and know everything that there is to know about medical illustration. I mean, really, just sitting down at a table at breakfast and striking up a conversation with someone you never met, and or talking to someone when you're standing in line at the book signing, or like just deciding to talk to somebody who's just standing there in the salon. It's the easiest place in the world to socialize for a medical illustrator. There's nothing to it, like at least for me. And I know some people are shy. I'm not really that shy. I mean, it was like a medical illustrator's paradise there, and for more reasons than one. Like I've expanded my network greatly, and I've followed a bunch of people on LinkedIn and Instagram. And now I'm like, I can put a face to a name and I'm like, wait, I met this person at the AMI and I know the kind of work that they do. And I know how they got to the place that they got to because I spent an hour talking to them, like over coffee, just at breakfast one morning. And they told me like their entire life story. And I mean, it was just wonderful. Like, I can't wait to go back, I guess. It's definitely going to be a yearly trip for me.
Yeah. I just recently had a conversation with another person named Keaton who was at the conference.
Oh, Keaton, I love Keaton. Yeah, he's in a year ahead of me.
Great. So you also mentioned that it was just a surreal experience and that made me motivated that, okay, next year I'm going to be going to the AMI. So yeah, I'm glad to hear. All right. So where do you see the field of medical illustration heading in the next 5 to 10 years, particularly regarding surgical training, surgical illustrations?
So, I mean, the obvious answer is that AI is going to be implemented somehow. I
Somehow.
mean, whether we like it or not. There was just a conversation in the AMI hub where somebody was looking into getting a job that was posted on the hub, and they said that using AI was part of their workflow and non-negotiable because it was the fastest way to get images. And
Mm.
that's true, but I mean, I'll beat this drum to death. Like AI, where we are right now, is not a viable replacement for a medical illustrator. That could change, in the near future, but right now there's no replacement for us in 2025. I think in the next 5 or 10 years of surgical illustration, AI will get better. But just from my understanding of the way that it works, it takes like trained on surgical illustrations that have been created in the past, and it generates something that it thinks is right, like that it anticipates is right. But that's um, But that's not the point of a medical illustration. I'll get that clean. That's not the point of a medical illustration. It's like, like if there's a cholecystectomy, going on, and you ask an AI to generate that, they will generate what they think is right, but it's something's going to be off, and that's where the medical illustrator steps in. So it's possible that it could become a large part of a lot of our workflows in the next 5 or 10 years, like as it gets better. And I think a lot of people's professions are probably going to turn into, like, this is kind of sad to think about, but like using AI and then holding its hand until it does something just as well as what they can do. Like, my brother's a programmer, and we've had conversations about this where it's similar with AI. AI is good at programming things like in small chunks, but it can't program like an entire video game. It can program, like it can program a text box to appear somewhere, but it can't do the whole thing. And so it can be used in chunks, but there's no replacement for like the programmer who can store it all in their brain or their document, and I think the same could be said for a medical illustrator. Like, or maybe not quite as much though, because like if you ask it maybe like for an illustration of a heart, there's going to be mistakes on it. It'll give it 3 chambers instead of 4, or there will be blood vessels inside the chambers, or it'll leave out the aorta or something like that, and that's something that you have to fix. And at that point, it's like, well, why don't you just start from scratch, where the whole style is going to look cohesive, and it's not going to have that AI feel, which I feel like a lot of people sort of associate with like lower quality now. Like I mean, it makes me think of like the Willy Wonka experience that happened in Scotland, where it was like everything was AI generated, and people, lined up for it, and they're like, this is like crap. It well, I feel like see AI as like a expression of like poverty, I guess, or like poor quality, like the inability, like, oh, you don't have the money to pay a proper illustrator to do something, so you're just it's like cutting corners. It's shoddiness is I think what a lot of people see AI as. So that's not something that they want to see in their medical illustrations. It doesn't give confidence to people to know that it's been checked by a person and it's accurate. If it's made by an AI that just thinks it's accurate. So I think it's going to have its place. It's impossible to say where it's going to be in 10 years or 5 years. But at the AMI, I talked with Cameron Sladen, who is an animator and has a big studio for medical animations. And how he uses AI effectively is he will render out his animations every third frame and use AI to just fill in the blanks.
Wow.
So it's almost like he's making a dotted line, and like the AI just makes it a solid. And I feel like that's an effective use of AI because it's reducing his rendering time and all of that. But also, I mean, there's different concerns as well, like the impact on the environment and the money and the water resources and stuff like that. I don't know. I'm not the person to tell you whether or not it's worth it, but I don't think it is. Like, I mean, I wouldn't use it in my workflow because I don't think it fits in well enough right now. Perhaps that will change in 5 or 10 years. Maybe it will, but
Absolutely.
not right now.
I feel like
I
I
can't
feel like
really.
that.
I mean,
Yeah.
maybe there's. Sorry, I think we're a little broken up, but
No, that's okay.
I think there will be some other changes. I mean, a lot of people will point to AI as the big change that's going to come in the next 5 or 10 years, and it's just impossible to predict it. I mean, it evolves so rapidly; it's just we can't keep up with it. But the thing that I think we can predict, maybe that will be easier to predict, is the state of like Adobe and other apps. So I think Procreate is probably going to become a pretty serious competitor with Adobe if they keep updating the capacity for Procreate. And
I think it already.
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of things that it can do. I mean, it doesn't quite have, the memory. Like, you can only do so many layers in Photoshop or in Procreate, and, like, there's a lot more tools in Photoshop and all that kind of stuff. So, I mean, it's naive to assume that, like, you can do everything in Procreate that you can do in Photoshop. It's not true, but like, I think in the next 5 or 10 years, that might become a little bit more true. Like, and I think Adobe like its stranglehold on medical illustrators might loosen a little bit. And same thing with like Cinema 4D. I mean, Blender's already incredible. Like, it's such a good, if you can't afford Cinema 4D,
Absolutely.
it works similar. Its render engine's similar. Like some people, I've seen. I mean, I can't really tell the difference between a molecular illustration that's created in Blender versus Cinema 4. And like there's other what else? There's other things like Adobe Illustrator. There's other vector programs, and I'm sure there will be like in-browser programs that you know are going to be cheaper.
Oh,
Hey, sorry.
no, that's okay.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, I think
You're saying something of Blender, yeah.
basically, I think, yeah, like Blender's, I don't know if it's going to overtake Cinema 4D because they don't have the money and the resources.
Blender user for a very long time. But then I had to make the switch to Cinema 4D because there were just some things about making clones and animating them, and a lot more things that were very easily achievable in Cinema 4D. I mean, it's more intuitive. For me, it's
Right.
intuitive. Some of the shots are like just very easy to be done in Cinema 4D rather than in Blender, even though it's free, open source, and everything. But I just say if I have the money, if you have the money, I just invest in Cinema 4D. I mean, Blender is still a little behind
Yeah,
these stuff, but still, I think being a free and open source software, Blender is amazing. Yeah.
that's true. I'm also like a Cinema 4D user. I don't use Blender as much, but my license is rapidly hurtling towards expiration
Yeah.
as I've graduated. If I had the choice, I would use Cinema 4D rather than Blender, but the price tag is a little bit of a barrier. I would like to see Blender, increase in its capacity in the next 5 or 10 years. I don't know if it will. Um, but I think probably one of the bigger changes that we're going to see is Adobe's like monopoly on medical illustration sort of crumbling a little bit, or at least some of the foundations are going to start to shake.
So
I mean, just so many people prefer to use Procreate nowadays for their main drawing things and only use Photoshop for, just the things that Photoshop can do. It's just so much more intuitive, and I just I hope they can make quality of life changes a little bit and Procreate to make it a little bit of a smoother ride. But um, I really do think it's going to start to overtake it at some point. As long as people keep using it and pressuring Apple to I mean, Apple's not the greatest company in the world, but like I feel like they're probably pretty similar in Adobe as far as ethics are concerned.
yeah, I get your point. Yeah. I'd like to know. So my last question to you is, what are the recent challenges that most of the medical illustrators are facing and that we just need to point out to, you know?
Well, I guess I can only really speak to how things have been in the United States.
Absolutely, yeah.
Uh,
You're there.
but there have been attacks on academia, and there's been an anti-intellectual movement in this country that's been going on for like a decade, longer even, where people don't trust science. The main communicators of science and medicine, honestly, are us. I was told recently that, when you look in a textbook or when you look on a web page, you skim and skim and skim until you can find the medical illustration that will show you what everything is saying because it's just easier to digest. And so, I mean, it's not our job to like, run the banner of intellectualism again for medical illustrators, but, it's, I think, something that we need to be aware of, that when science is being communicated to people, it's our responsibility. And I think it's a very important time to be careful about it and to not talk down to people and to, show everything as clearly as we possibly can and not gatekeep science and make things accessible. Because people, I mean, a lot of the times, like, I think, people like vaccine hesitant people and, the RFKs of the world have like a deep mistrust of medicine right now. And, I think we're medicine's biggest cheerleaders. But I mean, like one of the big things that I've personally that like the new administration has personally affected me is the attacks on academia. In January, I was in talks to perhaps get a position made for me at Winship Cancer Institute at Emory, to be their in-house medical illustrator, make my freelance position sort of more official. And so I was talking to the director of basic research, do this for you and see what we can do about getting this made. And then when Trump got elected and all the attacks on academia started coming down, Emory underwent a hiring freeze. And so that was completely shot, directly impacted me. Was not able to get a job right out of graduate school because of the attacks on academia. And, my interest, I think, is like research and stuff coming to the forefront, education, patient education, doctor education, researcher education, that kind of stuff. Remember my initial track was publishing and editorial work, so that's the kind of stuff that I really enjoy. And like, it's really been a hard thing to watch. Alyssa Eckert was a CDC medical illustrator, and the CDC is right across from Emory University. She was fired along with the entire medical illustration team because of the budget cuts, and she was the one, along with I believe it was Dan Higgins, who's a UIC alum, that created the image of the coronavirus, the novel coronavirus. And they were fired.
Really? Yeah, I mean, I recently was.
Thankfully,
I,
Alyssa recently got a job again. Uh, you know, that's good for her, and I'm very, very pleased about that. That kind of thing is just really disheartening to see as an American medical illustrator. And I think it probably is for a lot of us too.
understand because I was also recently talking to a professor. I don't know, I don't remember the name of the university, and he's also in Illustrators. And he said that basically there are just no fundings being given to the universities for this thing, and he was saying that the thing that I just don't know when I'm teaching to the student, I just don't know whether to tell them that they should make the pivot from what they're actually studying. Yeah, I mean, I was like, really? And he was like, yeah, I mean, I'm just not sure now. I mean, it's a big threat to the industry. And he was very, very confused about the fact that he's actually teaching the students, and the students might not be able to put their foot into the industry because of this political backlash happening. So, yeah, it was kind of disheartening to hear from a professor.
That is disheartening. Although I heard a lot of optimism at the AMI, like a lot of my cohort are getting jobs, and people are people who were fired earlier this year rehired again, finding new places to work. And
Yeah.
so that opens up a lot of opportunities for us recent grads now that we're no longer competing with people who've been in the industry for 15 years. We have the sort of open playing field that a lot of our predecessors had many years ago. Like we hear these mythological times 10 years ago when you would graduate and you would get a job handed to you on a silver platter because medical illustrators were so in demand, and it's just not like that anymore. I mean, people in the cohort above me were telling me that they applied to 50 or 60 jobs before they got an offer. And I've got my list of how many jobs I've applied to just make sure that I'm making progress, and it's nearing 20. So like we'll see what happens. I'm still always trying and hammering away at it, but you know it can be really disheartening, like the state of, especially like also the administration with the tariffs and all that has really damaged the economy. So people just don't have the money to be hiring something they see as superfluous. A lot of people think medical illustrators aren't necessary, and a lot of us will tell you that's not true. Um, it's can you imagine a medical textbook without the illustrations? I mean, it would be unreadable, Like,
No, it's indigestible.
yeah, right.
Yeah.
Just completely like nobody would go into medicine if they had to read from a textbook like that.
Yeah, absolutely. The notion that we medical illustrators are not needed is just completely obnoxious. I mean, we
Yeah,
are needed, obviously. Yeah. So,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, medicine, yeah, like if you think about usually when people imagine the medical field, what comes into their brains are medical illustrations,
Yeah.
like that they've seen. You know, I when I was at the AMI, again, another AMI story, but somebody said like that what was really an amazing experience for them was that a doctor, like a surgeon, had told them that they had seen their illustration for a procedure in a textbook, and the first time they did that procedure, and then every preceding time they imagined that illustration in their head while they were doing the procedure, like a life-saving procedure. And that's just like, I mean, what an incredible thing to hear as a medical illustrator, you know, that your work helped to save a life is, I mean, probably like the ultimate goal for some of us.
I get it. I think I think what I think just the demand of medical illustrators will just I feel like it just will keep increasing in the future because we will have just more biotech companies, more products being released to cure a lot of diseases that will be coming in futures. I don't think that we will be not no more needed or something like that. So yeah, I'm optimistic about the future. Yeah.
That's good. I mean, I think we are going to have to make our peace with AI someday.
Yeah,
Maybe
absolutely.
not this day, but when it becomes powerful enough to
Yeah.
replace us,
Hmm.
then well, I mean,
Absolutely.
I don't even know what to say at that point. Like, I don't think anybody does. I think a lot of people are worried about that, not just medical illustrators. But, you know, we will see what that does to the workforce, I guess, is one
Yeah.
of going to be the great mysteries of our generation.
Yeah. 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 I think, our generations or our children will see that part of AI revolution actually happening. So yeah. Thank you, Marco, for coming over the podcast and sharing so many great insights with us. I'm grateful to have you. So yeah.
Thank
Uh,
you very much for having me. It was a pleasure to talk to you.
yeah. Thank you so much for coming up. Thank you. Okay. See you next time then. Bye.
See ya. Bye.
Bye.